Hey guys, I'm Sylvia, I'm 30 years old, and in 2016 I got diagnosed with mediastinal B cell lymphoma, which is a rare type of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. This year I'll be in remission 5 years, and for that reason, and hopefully to give you all some hope, I want to share my story. I'm originally from the Netherlands, and I studied a bachelor in media and entertainment management before I moved here, and I graduated in 2015. In the last year of my bachelor degree, I started working as a freelance designer. I wanted to run my own business, and after a few months I sort of figured out that I wanted to learn more about online and digital design as well. So I looked into studying a master degree, but I couldn't really find anything in the Netherlands. So started looking abroad and found a few really cool masters in Australia and in the States, and decided I wanted to go and study at Griffith University in Brisbane. And that's what actually made me move to Australia in January 2016. Once I got here, it was a huge lifestyle difference compared to Europe, but I loved it. The weather was amazing in Brisbane. I remember when I moved, I went from -2 to 35 degrees and I had to adjust, but it was nice, it was good, everything was new, and I loved my master degree. I worked as a creative intern as well at a startup company, and they hired me after that as a freelance designer. Basically, life was kind of perfect. I really enjoyed it, and the lifestyle really suited me. And basically after 6 months, that's when I got diagnosed. So it was only 6 months in Australia when I got diagnosed, and then everything sort of fell apart. In July 2016, I developed a little cough, and I didn't really know what was going on. I actually thought I just had the flu or a cold, and it wasn't anything massive. But it was a bit of annoying timing because it was right in the middle of my exams. So I decided to go to the GP and ask her hey, I think I'm getting the flu. It was also flu season, it was winter. And she basically told me, I'll give you some antibiotics, but make sure you take some rest after your exams. So I went home, took the antibiotics, and they didn't help. The cough just got worse and worse. Couldn't lay flat anymore in bed, for example. When I was trying to sleep, I had to put up 2 pillows just to be able to breathe properly. But still, I didn't really think anything massive was going on. Maybe a chest infection or pneumonia, but somehow, looking back on it now, my body obviously was trying to tell me something, and in my mind it didn't feel right. So I did decide to go back to the GP and ask her, what the hell's going on with me? It just didn't feel right. And I remember her saying, Sylvia, don't worry, I'm sure you'll be fine, but let's run an x-ray just to make sure nothing's wrong with your lungs. So we did, same day, straight after my appointment actually, got a chest x-ray, and that was in the morning. And then in the afternoon, this was on a Friday afternoon, they called me back. And they were we would like you to come in right now. And that's when I sort of realized something was really wrong. But I reckon I still really didn't think I had lymphoma. I was 24, super healthy, quite fit at the time. And I just, my mind just started spinning, but at the same time I didn't really have a lot of time to think about it. Because I went back straight to the GP, took one of my best friends with me, and then they told me they found this huge mass between my lungs, and it didn't feel real. It was like I was watching some really bad movie from the outside. I was surely this can't be happening to me. I'm so young, and how, why? So, a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, disappointment straight away. And the GP sent me to the hospital that Friday afternoon. So went to the Royal Brisbane Hospital to the emergency room. So many different tests like in that night, and I remember it was so busy and overwhelming, and I really didn't know what to do with myself. I was just sitting there like a zombie. After all of those tests, they admitted me in the hospital. I didn't really get any results straight away. They put me in general for a few days, and in those few days I got sort of 5 or 6 different doctors to see around me, because they really it's really hard for them to diagnose straight away, like the type of cancer, how bad it is. And I remember thinking, I was like, how bad is this gonna be? Is this gonna be treatable? Is this not gonna be treatable? Are they gonna tell me, well, this is it, like you're done basically, or what's going to happen? And I think that the fact that I didn't know what was going on, that was like the most frustrating and painful part. So after those like few days, they finally put me on the oncology department, because they slowly started to figure out like my final diagnosis. And I got to see a hematologist and went through all the scans, the CT scan, heaps of x-rays, blood tests, PET scan, all of it. That took about like 2 weeks in total for them to give me the diagnosis. And when they finally came to my bed and told me, my diagnosis and what the plan was, it was such a relief. And I know that sounds really weird, or maybe it sounds relatable, but at least you know what's going to happen. And I felt like, okay, like it's a type of cancer which is really treatable, so at least there's a plan in place, and let's get it started ASAP. Like I don't want to die. So that's what happened. Like I literally had 2 days before they started me on chemo. And they basically got like 9 rounds of chemotherapy, which is like every month 1 round. And the first round was in the hospital just to see how I would react to it, and not just like physically but also mentally. Went okay. I mean, it's so overwhelming, everything. You don't really, you're on autopilot, you don't really know what's going on. I think you're not really processing it. I guess that will come once you get discharged from the hospital, which happened to me, because after that first round, I was still doing pretty well, wasn't really feeling sick or anything. I didn't look sick yet. So they discharged me. I went home, and that's all I wanted. I just wanted to go home and sleep in my own bed. But that's also when it sort of started to kick in what was going on. And that's also the point where I had to tell my family and my friends back home what was going on, or what was going to happen. And that was so tough, and I waited too long, but I reckon it was so hard to make so many people sad at the same time. You feel responsible for them, and it's almost like you want to take care of them instead of let them take care of you. And I just couldn't deal with that. I postponed it literally until I got discharged from the hospital. And then, even though it's not your fault and there's nothing you can do about it, it does feel like it. And then how are all those people gonna deal with it? It's such a big thing, to drop. So I think that must have been one of the really hard parts. And maybe looking back, I wish I would have handled that a little different, because those people, they will deal with it no matter how, because they love you. I did think about going back home when I got diagnosed, but I decided not to. I guess the main reason for me was I was only 6 months in Australia and I was still discovering everything, and everything was new and a distraction. And going home would have meant focusing on treatment and having cancer 24/7, and I would just be the girl who got cancer. And here a lot of people didn't really know me yet, and I could just be more than that. I came to Australia for a reason. I wanted to study that master degree. I was very set on doing it, and I think not, going back home, I would feel like I would have given up. Obviously, like I know it's not like that, and no one would say like, oh, you've just given up and gone home, but that's how it felt to me. So I did decide to stay and do all the treatment in Australia. So my treatment consisted of 9 rounds of chemotherapy, and 1 round is basically 1 month. So I got treatment for only 3 days, the first week of the month, and then another 3.5 weeks of rest. And basically every month every month is the same. And then next to that, 3 months of radiation, which was a walk through the park compared to chemotherapy. And the first 3 rounds were actually quite, well, I'm not gonna say easy, but I didn't really have a lot of side effects. I was tired, but doing pretty well considering, and because I was reacting to it so well, the doctors kept increasing the amount of chemotherapy. They just went up every round. So it was sort of, a bit on, cruising along, like just trying to get through it. And at the start, they told me I probably would need 6 rounds of chemotherapy, and that was gonna do the job. So I was really focused on that. It's like running a marathon, it's gonna be 42 Ks, and you're focused on that finish line. So I literally, that was the only thing I was thinking about. It's like, okay, 6 rounds. I marked the date in my calendar, and I was just crossing off that a little box every day, like a child does for the holidays. And that went pretty well for 3 months, and I was still doing quite a bit of stuff next to my treatment. I went to the gym a few times a week and did fun stuff with my friends. Wasn't losing my hair yet, so besides having to go to the hospital all the time, I still felt pretty normal. And then that really changed and turned around when we sort of entered the 4th month. In that 4th round of chemotherapy, I started losing my hair, and my hair was a bit longer then, and it was very red up until here. I would wake up and I would find red locks of hair on my pillow every morning, and it's so confronting. And I was sort of hoping, oh, maybe I'm gonna be one of those people who's not gonna lose their hair, because it hadn't happened up until that 3rd round. And it's like, oh, maybe not, maybe I react differently, which obviously, of course, not. So I started losing it, and I think the most painful part about it is you lose part of your identity. It's who you are, and it's not your own, it's not by choice. And I looked in the mirror, I had to look in the mirror every day and not recognize that person. And that's when it mentally got really hard. And I asked my friend, one of my best friends, to actually cut my hair really short when it started to fall out, because I just couldn't deal with all the hair around the house. that's also when I got my wig. And my wig was real hair and it looked very natural. So it felt safe and no one really saw that I was actually sick because I didn't really look the part yet. But it's also, that round was also when it started physically getting harder. I just couldn't really do much anymore. I was tired all the time. I started to feel nauseous, and I think after that round, that's when it got really tough mentally, because there was a lot of things I wasn't able to do anymore, which made me feel normal, and suddenly that got taken away from me. And so I kind of find it really hard to say this out loud, but I think after that I kind of wanted to give up. I didn't want to do it anymore. After that 4th round of chemotherapy, I got a PET scan just to see if it was working. It was, just not as effective as they hoped it would be, and that was really disappointing. I got told I needed more chemo, so instead of 6 rounds, we were more looking at 8 or 9 rounds of chemotherapy. And that just really hit me, and it made me angry, and it made me sad, and I was so focused on those 6 rounds, and maybe naive as well. I just thought well, those 6 rounds, we'll get through it, and then I'm gonna go back to my normal life, before I got sick, and just pick up where I left off. But it doesn't work like that. I think around the 6th round of chemotherapy, where I really had this moment, I thought I wasn't gonna make my 25th birthday. It was only for a little while, it didn't last long, but it just got mentally and physically so hard that I didn't think I was gonna make it, and that was really tough. But somehow you also find the strength to push through, because you basically don't really have a choice, because that would just mean giving up and dying, basically, and you don't want to die, so you find some inner strength to keep it going. It's like an animal instinct, what sort of comes out, that passion and that will to live. And I think especially when you're young, it's so different. There's so much you want to do in your life, at least that's what it felt like for me. I had still so many plans, things I wanted to do, so you do find that strength, and you just keep pushing, and it gets harder every round from then, or it got for me. But somehow I made it till through 9 rounds of chemo, and that 9th round, that's also when I graduated my master degree, because I did do that next to having treatment. And a lot of people have asked me how, and there's literally, I can't answer the question, you just do it. But I'm glad I did, because when I graduated, that gave me hope, as in, see, there's so many things to live for, and you want to do, and there are so many people who want you to succeed and want you to live. So I did push through, and I made it, and I graduated, and that gave me hope and something to hold on to. Here we are, and finished 9 rounds of chemotherapy and graduated, and got a little mental and physical break after that before starting radiation. They give you some time to recover mentally and physically before you go into radiation, which for me was 3 months, from Monday till Friday, every morning at 8 a.m. sharp. But compared to all the chemo I went through and how hard that was, the radiation was kind of like a walk through the park. I mean, my whole life and schedule evolved around coming in for treatment, but I wasn't really sick anymore. Started to get better slowly. I was just tired. That was I think that was the main symptom. I just got tired. But from then, a lot of things got better, not just physically, but also mentally a little bit at that time. And then I had another PET scan in between, actually. So after I finished all of that chemo, another PET scan to see if there was any cancer or abnormal activity left, and there wasn't. And I remember I was sitting in the waiting room to get the results of that final scan. I was so nervous, up to the point where I could literally throw up. And they told me the good news, and I think I was happy, but also I was so lost. Or you're supposed to be this insane happiness, and you basically, your whole life evolved around getting better, and then you get to that point and it's a relief and you're supposed to be happy. But all I could think was, what the hell am I supposed to do with my life? I lost my whole purpose. It's getting better became my purpose in life when I was sick. So when I achieved that goal, I was completely lost. I didn't know what I wanted out of life. I didn't even know who I was anymore, what was important to me. And I was sitting there and I asked them, so what now? What's the plan? And then there is no plan. It's you can't pick up where you left off. Life wasn't the same for me anymore. And I wasn't really happy at all, to be honest. And I think that's one of the hard parts when you finally get in remission. That mental aspect kicks in, because during treatment, everyone around you as well is so focused on you getting physically better, they forget about the mental part. And I think it's really important to actually pay more attention to it, because I went through that really black hole, and I needed it. I had to come out on the other side. But I think it's okay to ask for help in that time, and it took me a long time to recover from it. I did see a therapist for about a year, maybe even longer. I needed it and needed to find some purpose in life again. So much had changed, not my personality, but I think what was important to me in life, my perspective on the world, how I wanted to live my life. But also I felt most of the time, especially the first year, like a ticking time bomb. I wanted to do everything now, very impulsive. I didn't have any patience. And that's basically because I was so afraid that it would come back and I wouldn't get another chance to do what I wanted to do. So I basically started ticking off all the things I wanted to do, which were on my bucket list, which I made a few months before that. One of those things was actually skydiving. I did that a few days after I got in remission, which my doctor probably wouldn't really have agreed with, but it was something I had to do, and it made me feel alive. I moved back to Europe after all of that, because I was only supposed to stay in Australia for over a year to study my degree and then travel around a bit and go back, and I achieved that. And I was convinced I wanted to move back home. So I went, and it was kind of a disaster, as in for me mentally. I didn't feel at home at all. It was really good to finally see my family and my friends after everything I went through, but it was also really hard for them to relate. I left the Netherlands healthy, and I came back and I was healthy again, and I looked the part. I didn't look sick anymore. So they weren't here when I was at my worst, and I came back and I looked healthy again, and that's sort of like something people don't really understand in general. You know, once you look better, like, you're supposed to be better, so what could possibly still be wrong? It can feel so lonely, because even though other people might be going through cancer, their treatment might be completely different, their family will react differently to it, so basically the disease is so unique, as in no one can relate like 100%, which makes it very lonely and very hard to explain what you're mentally dealing with. After bouncing around for a little bit in Europe and catching up with everyone, I did a few trips, traveled around a bit in Europe, trip through the States, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. That was also the time when I focused like 100% on my freelance design business. I didn't really have much time for it during treatment and uni, and it was just on the side trying to build and expand it 100%. So I put so much like energy and effort in it, and because it really is my passion, so I wanted it to succeed, but I felt like I couldn't do that in Europe and definitely not back home. So I wanted to move back to Australia, but I didn't want to live in Brisbane anymore. It was like too many painful memories, and that's how I ended up on the Sunshine Coast, and which gave me a chance to heal properly, physically and mentally. And in general, I think living on the Sunshine Coast in Noosa is a very healing place, and it definitely helps. The ocean really close, learning to surf, just being outdoors. I think the ocean and nature are very powerful in that way. And that's also the time when my business really started to, well, it was already taken off, but next level, and got to work with more and more local clients over there. Other creative people who are now my best friends. At this point I have a personal assistant, and I work with clients all over the world. And I think somehow even focusing so much on that business really helped me healing as well. It gave me purpose again in life. When I moved to the Sunshine Coast, it gave me a lot of peace, and I really liked it, but I was only supposed to stay for a few months and see what will happen, how I would feel. Then COVID hit, and it sort of forced me to stay in that place, and at some point it really became my home. And I think I'm finally in a place mentally as well where I'm completely balanced, and I've accepted what happened to me and how to deal with it. And when I look at my life right now, I think I'm so much more grateful for small things in life. It just puts everything in perspective, and sometimes it makes it hard for me to look around and see other people complain about things which seem to me like so not important anymore. and I see them living through life, like not really living actually, just going through the motions instead of actually be in the present. If there's anything I'll learn from all of this is stop worrying about the past or the future too much. I mean, live in the now and in the present, because unlike a lot of people will tell you that you have all the time in the world, you don't. I don't want to have any regrets in my life. And does that mean I'm more impulsive or take more risks in my personal life, even when it comes down to business? Yeah, probably. But at least I am living my life, and I think the only way to learn about your life is actually by living it. If there's anything I would want to tell other people is don't take it for granted. Like, realize how lucky you are that you're actually healthy. Because for a lot of people, that's not really, well, for people who are going through cancer or have survived it, it's not really a given anymore. I mean, I'm doing a lot better, but I still struggle with it every day. It's every time I need to come in for a checkup, it takes me back to a really painful time where I faced my mortality at like 24 years old, and the fact that, you know, you can actually die at a really young age, and people don't talk about it really, because maybe it's a bit of a taboo. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I have some serious PTSD from going through all of this. I call it cancer PTSD, but there are like certain triggers for me. For example, when someone young dies, like it's almost like I can feel their pain because I've almost been there. Or when someone who has cancer dies, that's another huge trigger, and it makes me obviously really sad for that person and their family and everyone, but also takes me back to my own experience. And those are just things you need to learn to live with. I would like to give other young people who are going through the same thing or have been through the same thing, to give them some kind of hope and maybe a tiny bit of inspiration to keep pushing and not give up, and be their mental health advocate. Because I lived through all of it, and I know how hard it is. But I also know once you get through it, it will get better, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think for me the most important thing, and something that will always come to my mind and sort of sticks with me every day, is to be happy and enjoy my life, and not just enjoy all the good moments, but also the bad moments and the weird moments and just all of it, because, you know, we actually get to experience those moments, and that makes me feel alive, and my appreciation for being alive and basically getting a second chance to live better. I really hope this story gives you hope to not give up and keep pushing through. I know it's hard, and I don't want to beat around the bush. Like, not everyone survives, not everyone makes it. But in any case, that should make you want to live your life even more. And I think that is my hope for people who are going through this, or even after, when they're struggling with their mental health. Like, don't give up, ask for help, and it will be tough. Like, it's not easy, but you will get there, just like I did.